All right, what's good? It's Thursday, it's 5 p.m. That means that it's time for End Hype Live. And as per usual, we have a fire guest really going to answer those questions because that's what you guys do. You DM me, you email me, and you say, Callie, how do I do this thing? And usually I have the same question. So I reach out to my network and I get somebody who's way smarter than me about that topic to come and give us a little school lesson. And today I've got my man Corey, and Corey is the sales CEO, legit, right?
That's right.
And so I talk about this all the time about reaching out to customers, figuring out what they want, making something that they actually want to buy, and like selling. And I say that sales is pretty much the ultimate skill because that's why I see all those brilliant misfits out there that come out with the innovative, crazy ideas. That's where they stumble. Is they can't actually like get that thing out into the world and get into the market. And I don't want you to. I want you to kick ass. I want you to change your life, change the world. And Corey, sales man, what's the deal? What's the deal? Let's first. What's the story of Corey? Right? What's
Well, man, how long do you have? Do you like if we've got 10 days, I'm here.
now? Uh, Corey is a funny guy. So like if anybody is a fan of Brad Lee, uh, you know, I'd been listening to your podcast and I was like, oh man, this is two hilarious people just combo move right here. So it was on, Brad Lee, two great salespeople. And if you want some fun stories about Corey, you gotta listen to my man Brad Lee. But off that, no psychedelic South American ayahuasca trip. What's the story of Corey? How do you get from a dude to the sales CEO?
Well, here's why I chose sales CEO to be, kind of the brand that I stand behind. And the, really the reason is because sales is in every single part of our lives, right? It's in if you have kids, right, and you have to explain to your kid why they need to do X, Y, and Z, you have to sell them on why they need to do X, Y, and Z. You have to have the right you have to have that right talk track. And it's the same with sales, same way with your kids, same way with your wife, husband, whatever it may be. Everything we do in life is sales. And so I feel like there's there's a dirty association with the word sales, right? And so
Yep.
and I think we've all heard used car salesman, right? And
Lazy salesman, this and that.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Because back in the day, if you went to a car lot, that's the kind of person that you would get. And there's, I think from a young age, we're conditioned to believe that salespeople are out to get you or are out to, you
Tricky.
know, oh, they're out to sell you something. Oh, they're a salesperson. Of course, that's what they're out to do. I
Yeah.
mean, if I can't sell you my product or service, I can't help you, right? I mean, if I could without selling you a product or service, I'd be happy to. But if my product or service enhances Callie's life, then it does me good and it does you good for me to try to sell you the product, right?
Yeah.
Now, if
Yeah.
I try to sell you a product that you don't need or can't use, or it's something that doesn't fit you personally, now that's where you fall into, the sleazy sales guy, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I love so I love two things about that. One is like, yeah, sales is everything because if we look at persuasive language, getting what we want, creating a life that we want to live, like you've got to, you got to kind of create your own reality here. You kind of have to sell yourself, but like a common question people ask me is like, how do I find a co-founder? Or how do I find a partner for my business? And I'm like, you gotta convince one person. You gotta sell one person to join you on your crazy journey. And like, if you can't sell one person, like, how are you gonna sell customers? But yeah, I like that. When you really think about it as like sales as connecting with somebody and kind of creating that partnership, then it leads you to the other thing you said, which is helping people, which I feel like um, I mean this in a good way, is that when you approach sales like you're going to help somebody, it's like the laziest way to do it, right? It's the easiest way to do it, right? Because you don't have to trick anybody. You say like, hey, this product is awesome, and this is a group of people that want it. It's almost like you got to get in front of them. You have to explain it well. You have to be like a real human being, but you don't have to trick anybody. And then people like it, and then they tell other people about it, and they start buying it. And you don't have to do anything. So it's almost like doing it that kind of ethical way is easier, I guess.
Well, and that's a great point. Here's another piece that I should have hit on is that, when you're talking about, if I'm having a conversation on a discovery call with someone who's trying to have me come in and consult their group or consult with them or coach them, whatever you want to call it, right? It all really means the same thing. Here's the difference is if you're educating the customer on what's best for them, it doesn't feel like you're a slimy salesperson. It doesn't feel like you're trying to sell them a product, because if you're educating someone on what you have to offer, it's not a sale. It is a sale, but it's not a sale. Does that make sense? In other words, so a lot of folks get hung up on the word sales. And I'm working with a group right now, and that's their biggest roadblock, is the fact that they're called salespeople. And so I said, okay, just consider yourself an educator or a connector, or call yourself whatever you want to call yourself.
Facilitator.
If it gives you a better if it gives you a better way to view yourself in your role, call yourself whatever you want to call yourself.
I love that. Yeah, because it's like a perceived obstacle problem, right? Where you've created a story in your mind that doesn't serve you, and you're like, I feel like we get conditioned on the normal society path to think like, well, sales is money and money is bad, and there's just something bad about this whole thing. Like I'm extracting money from people and this and this, and it's really hard for people to get over that. Like, yeah, if you have an amazing product, it's like if I have an amazing product that people need. Oh, they just turned off the lights on me.
I noticed that.
Yeah. It's not you're not extracting money. So
you're not convincing somebody to purchase something that they don't need, right? Here's an example. I was talking to one of the guys that in a group that I coach or that I work with, and he said, I just feel like when I'm and really what he was doing is uncovering problems, right? He was uncovering other issues that it's a plumbing company, and he was uncovering other issues in the house, and he felt uncomfortable about having that conversation with the customer because the customer didn't call him out there for this other thing that he found. Well, how often do you go to a store for one thing and you wind up buying that thing and maybe another thing that you need? There's no difference, right? Zero difference, except for that customer is going to love you when you uncover this issue that now they're not going to have to worry about down the road. And that's where I think a lot of salespeople get hung up, is they feel like they're categorized as, this slime ball person. But that's just a thought, right? It's just a thought that I'm a slime ball or I'm doing something unethical. And at the end of the day, if you're being transparent, you're being authentic, you shouldn't feel like you're having to sell yourself. Like, I don't feel like I have to sell myself when I'm having conversations with people about my consulting / coaching services. I just don't, because if you find value in what I'm telling you and you think that I'm going to help you in your life, then most likely I can help you in your life. But if you think I can't help you in your life, I'm sure as hell not going to try to convince you that I can help you. Right? I mean, that just doesn't make sense to me. Why would you try to force yourself onto somebody, or force your product or service onto somebody? It just doesn't make sense to me. And so at the end of the day, you have to be ethical about what you're selling. You have to believe in what you're selling, because you know a lot of us have heard about incongruency. And if I'm telling you that my product or service is going to do X, Y, and Z, and I don't believe that, most likely the incongruency in my face or my body language or my tonality is going to display that I think I'm full of shit. That makes sense.
Yeah, it totally makes sense to me. I I uh I just find the whole experience really interesting because there's such a huge barrier of fear with it, and it might just be because I deal with a lot of more introverted people, or people that are just beginning. They don't really want to get out there, so maybe that's where I initially talked to them. But you'd be surprised how people are even running 6 or 7 figure businesses and they're terrified of sales. Like they've lucked into a contractor, they've lucked into a market, and they're looking at bringing it to another level, and they really haven't built a sales program or have a sales person. And it's based on either that perception thing like we're talking about, or it's based on this fear thing. And so I know, like you as a coach, you probably experience a lot of those obstacles. Do you have any suggestions for people that when they hit that fear barrier, and like it might present as like ego or it might present as like something else, but do you have anything for them to break through that fear barrier and get onto the other side, like gain certainty?
I would say, and I'm going to steal this from Ed Milet, but he said, he didn't say, Corey. He was telling us as a group, the RJ Syndicate group. He said, you don't have to believe everything. Think about that. You don't have to believe everything you think. So, to your
That's true.
point, you don't have to believe that fear that you're feeling about whatever your next sales opportunity is. Why don't you just choose to believe that you're going to be successful in that next venture? And most likely, your success rate's going to go up. My experience shows that it will absolutely go up.
That's amazing. Yeah, I think there you could if you're going to do something new, there's always those like little ideas, those like encroaching thoughts that come in, or questioning thoughts, and that's part of your your DNA. Like it's part of your evolved self. Is just saying like, hey, over the horizon or outside the cave, there could be a tiger or something like that. So, stick to what you've trained, stick to the game plan, like and maybe you should be afraid of it, or you should dislike it, or you should um, actively rail against it. And it's it's hard um, for people, like something ends up clicking with them. It's like one of the metaphors or one of the analogies ends up working for on the sales is bad thing. I mean, I tell people this, and you've heard me say this before, is like, money isn't the mission. Money makes the mission possible. So people that are trying to think big, they want to do something really amazing, whether it's just make a really cool product, like a consumer good, or they want to change the world all the way up. I'm like, dude, you can't do that without money. It's really hard to, we talk about the cup, you can't pour something into somebody else's cup when your cup's empty. Well, you can't run a business that's going to help people when the business has no money, right?
That's right.
Yeah, and like the money doesn't get there by accident.
That's right. Well, to your fear question earlier, here's really what the fear is. If I'm being totally honest with you, it's the fear of rejection. Right?
Okay.
Nobody likes to feel rejected. And so I believe that well, first of all, fear is the number one thing that stops every salesperson, period. That's a fact. And in that, but to take it a level deeper, I believe that it's the fear of rejection. Nobody likes to have somebody hang up on them if you're making cold calls, or nobody likes to be deleted if you're sending emails or DMs or whatever the case may be. But really, have you ever had anybody like cuss you out for sending them an email or a DM? No, not
Yeah,
really. I mean, maybe once in a blue moon. I can't think of a time that I've ever had anybody cuss me out.
I'll tell you a funny story, and I don't think I've told this on any of my in any of the podcasts or anything. So one summer, my friend and I, this is right when satellite TV started, right? We were like, oh, you get $50 if you sign somebody up, and it was like if you get $50 for a referral, and it was something stupid. It was like $100, and when you're 20 years old, like that seems like pretty decent money. So we were like, yeah, let's do door to door. And so we did door to door sales, like kind of on the weekends and the evenings and things like that. Probably the worst time that people definitely don't want to be disturbed. So you get a lot of doors slammed in your face. You definitely get cussed out quite a bit. And I don't know. It definitely didn't work. I think we made like 5 sales or 6 sales. Um, but
But what you learned, Callie, from
yeah,
that, and I'm sorry to jump in, but what you learned from that was you have to keep going and doing it over and over. And I believe that door to door sales
yeah.
is the first place every salesperson should start because it's hands down the hardest.
But see, here's the my takeaway now from it, and it took me a while to really realize this, is that I did learn a really valuable sales lesson and really entrepreneurial lesson is when the risk is zero, you have infinite at bats, right? So if you drive up to the neighborhood and you knock on the door and the person tells you to go get lost, it's like, well, first there's 1,000 more doors to go pick, and second of all, they weren't going to buy it, so it didn't really matter. Like I lost
Exactly.
nothing. I lost 5 minutes of my time. So when the risk is zero, who cares? So I I look at that behavior a lot, and I look at a situation where I'm like, if I can lower the risk, where I could just do it theoretically infinite times, like let's just do that, right? But but also like who cares? I don't know that person. It's not like I pissed you off or pissed somebody, some my friend off. Like I pissed a random person off and they were inconvenienced for 1 minute. And like that was my job at the time. So I'm just gonna do it. And like what what's the worst thing that could happen, right? And it just happened over and over again. Somebody slammed the door in your face, so.
Yeah, no, you're right. Here's the other thing, dude. Like, let me ask you this: have you ever had an opportunity? Have you ever had a big deal on the line? Right? If
Yeah,
you've had a customer or client, and it was like, damn, dude, like I can feel when this thing closes because I can do all of these things because it's such a big deal.
yeah,
I and you probably said to yourself, God, I don't want to lose that deal,
yeah.
right?
Oh yeah, for
So
sure.
think about that for a second, though. What
Yeah.
did you lose? You're not losing anything. Did they already pay you? No, you
Yeah.
didn't lose anything. You just think you're going to lose. And there it goes back to the thought again. If you think you're going to lose the deal, probably going to lose the deal.
Yeah,
So,
there's like it's like because the numbers look different than that $50, or that you think like that it's different, but it's not different, right? It's just not. And yeah, I mean I agree. It definitely, I've been there a lot of times, and that's like your own thought. You think like, for me, I think, oh, when we get this piece of equipment, I mean, when we get this deal, we can get this piece of equipment. When we do this, we can do this, and you start architecting like that false narrative, and then it becomes real, I guess, to you. I call it entrepreneur math, right? People start making entrepreneur math, and they're like, if I get this, then I can get this, and I can do this. And yeah, it's like it's disappointing, but what are you going to do? Yeah, hopefully you didn't actually lose a whole lot, right? Or
no, you
you
didn't
lost
lose
that.
anything. I
Yeah,
mean, have you think about it? When a customer close on a deal that you're working on, they didn't pay you anything,
yeah.
but they didn't give you the money and then take it out of your account, right? And so
Might have lost
I
a
learned
plane
this.
trip or something like that. That's about it.
Right.
Yeah, yeah,
I mean, and I was talking to one of my dear friends, and this is several years ago, and I said, man, he was like, how's everything going? I said, man, I'm just waiting on this deal to close. I don't want to lose it. And he's like, well, same thing I just said. He was like, do they pay you? I'm like, no. He's like, then what do you have to lose? He was
That's
like,
funny.
and what do you have to lose by calling and finding out if you got the deal? Um, well, and really what the answer was is I didn't want to hear the answer because I knew in my heart, I knew how that call was going to go, or I projected how it was going to go. And guess what?
Yeah.
It went exactly that way.
So that's kind of the big boy version of like picking up the phone and calling and saying like, hey, I got a deal for you, and the person said, I'm not interested. And it's like, well, if you have the right product, you have the right person, and it, it's like you didn't really lose a whole lot, and there's also 1,000 people behind them waiting. So uh, yeah, it's like you have to get over it, and then you have to get over it on the closing side of that whole like sales journey or the sales funnel, however you want to think of it. It's like unless you spend a bunch of like in my industry, you might spend a bunch of R&D money, you might do this or this, might tie up some resources. Usually people pay, but like you're kind of tying up hopes and putting you know putting things in place. But yeah, at the end of the day, like what did you actually lose, right? You lost
Right.
potential, right? Hopefully, I was talking to somebody earlier today, and I was like, you got to look at it like a skills acquisition game, right? So I'm trying to get skills acquisition out of these. So like you're saying sales is everything. I think of it as everything's a skills acquisition game too. So like did I learn a little bit? Did I learn how to pitch that better? Did I learn how to message it better? Did I end up having to make that like slick page or that one sheeter or that brochure that I know that now that's going to help me replicate and scale? Like what did I learn? Did I learn about the problem a little bit better, or how those kind of companies are structured? Like what am I getting? I'm getting something out of it. Let's get on the right side of this.
That's so true. And here's the other thing that you didn't mention, that you also learned how not to do it the next time. Right? I mean, if you didn't close the deal and if you quote unquote lost it, now
Yeah,
you know what not to do. So you
that's right.
absolutely learned something, I hope.
Yeah. Yeah, I like that. Yeah, so there's all these positive things, and this kind of goes beyond sales. I think this just goes into general. Um, I mean, I just say like being a winner. Like just trying,
Yeah.
like putting yourself in the mindset of being a winner, but like looking at, um, you know, like right now, this time of year is crazy for me. Right, I had 100 things go wrong today. This is terrible. But then I got to look at it and I'm like, well, I get to talk to Corey. I get to do my live stream, which is cool. It's always fun. I had a really great conversation earlier today with somebody that runs an incubator, and yeah, so I get cool conversations, and I do get to do cool stuff. But it's like in general, it's just like what we're saying is like you gotta get back to that point where you're like, okay, it's not to me, it's not really gratitude. It's just kind of like getting your head screwed on straight and be like, hey, you know, I lost this got messed up, right? But what am I'm I'm already where a lot of people want to be, right? And I'm gonna get a whole lot out of it. So like I gotta kind of get on the other side of problems. I'm so busy, I'm like freaking out, but I'm like, man, other people have nothing to do. So like I gotta get on the blessed side of that insanity, right?
It's just perception, right? It's
Yeah,
just
yeah,
perception. You can view, let's just take the current, climate in this country.
yeah,
You can view it one of two ways, right? You can view it as everything's burning down all to hell, or you can view it as everything's getting a lot better. And you just make a choice of which way you want to go.
yeah. Well, I think either way, if you want things to be better, you know, you can make your life pretty much garbage no matter what the system
Yeah,
is. So if you
you're
can make
right.
it garbage, you can make it better.
That's exactly right, dude. 1,000. It's just like Joe Dispenza says: if your thoughts can make you sick,
Yeah,
your thoughts can make you well.
yeah. Yeah, I mean, for sure, like, thoughts become thoughts become actions and actions become things. So it's like and we're willing to believe this in business, but and we're willing to believe this in the gym, but people have a hard time believing this in their belief, right? So,
Right.
but yeah, I think that it's true. I mean, it's easy, um, it's easy to get into a shit mood, and it's easy. But yeah, I think I I'm getting like this last year or so, I've gotten really more and more into sales. Just uh, one, this is kind of dumb, but like I develop products, and we have this manufacturing business. I help people develop products, and it's like um, I would just say like, here's what we can do, and here's what we do, and I since it's our family business and it was already kind of at a certain level, you have a certain level of credibility. But I was like, when I started doing the product development, I was like 27, right? So you think like you go into a meeting with General Dynamics or Boeing, and you're like, yeah, I develop products. And they're like, okay, you're going to get onto this team with these people, and they're 50 and 55 years old, and you're going to make stuff. And I thought that was the problem. Like, I was like, man, these people are like, they're so much more experienced, and like they're wiser, and then it took me a while to realize like the reason that they have us on there is because like they know all these things. I know this other thing that they need. So like, okay, that's cool. Like I had to overcome that piece. And then, working along, I never really considered myself as doing sales up until like a couple of years ago, when really the more I started coaching startups, because they would be like, how do I do this thing? I was like, you just tell somebody what you want, and then you just tell somebody this and this and this, and then they buy it. And like, it really, we can create sales systems and make it more complicated, but I didn't really realize uh like how difficult it is for people. So like, I didn't really
Yeah.
I didn't really realize, I understood from starting my own things like how difficult it is from the start, but I don't know. Maybe it's that door to door thing, but I mean, I'm used
Well,
to people not being that happy. So
but I mean, you've hit on a really good point. I think the vast majority, Callie, I think the vast majority of people do believe that sales is hard. And part of the reason they believe it's hard is because they don't either one have the confidence to ask better questions,
okay.
or maybe they don't have the confidence to ask the question ever. Right.
Hmm.
I mean, here's a good example. My wife, we'll go through, we were coming back from Orlando, and she went through a drive through, like a barbecue thing, blah, blah, blah. It was the healthiest thing we could fucking find. And she gets her food, and she hated it.
Okay.
And she was like, yeah, I'm just going to throw it out. And it was like $20. And I was like, well, why are you going to throw it out? We're still in the parking lot. And she was like, what? I'm just not, I don't want to, fear, right? She just
Yeah.
didn't want, I don't know if she thought the person in the drive through was going to jump through the window. I'm not really sure. And
Yeah.
so I said, well, if you're not going to take it, if you're not going to return it, they don't know that their food's messed up.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
guess
Yeah.
what? Now the next person, then the next person, and if the next 10 people come through like you, their business is going to go down
Yeah.
because you
Yeah.
didn't speak up, right? And they didn't tweak their recipe. I said, it's not about the $20 matters because I don't want to throw it in the trash.
Yeah.
But the more important thing is we're costing people money that maybe they don't have, right?
Yeah.
Maybe that's their one night out a month or whatever, and they get shitty food because we didn't tell them their food sucked, and we didn't say it in those terms, but I was really kind to the lady, and I just said, hey, the food just didn't taste like we anticipated. She said, no problem. We'll just put it back on your card. I said, great. And we drove off. It was that simple.
I
And,
love that.
but you just got to ask. Just
Yeah.
ask for what you want,
Yeah.
you know?
That's cool. Yeah. I, yeah. I really think a lot of stuff boils down to that. And if it was more complicated than that, we would never be able to know what that process looks like unless we got started and just simply started doing it, right? Because you don't like if you're selling a really complex solution, right? You're not going to know how that solution gets integrated in these companies like right off the bat. There's not somebody you can hire. Like I can't hire you and you'd be like, oh, this is exactly how your solution that's never existed ever before in your business that's never existed ever before is going to go into this industry and disrupt this or push off this competition or change this. It's like like we've got to go and ask, right?
Yeah. I mean, really think about it, dude. Sales is just asking better questions and
Yes.
identifying what the problems are. And that's really all you're doing in sales. You're giving a result to a problem. And if you have a problem with your business or you have a problem with your product and I have a solution, why it would be selfish for me not to tell you about it.
Yeah. Oh yeah, yeah. Especially, people think B2B sales are super difficult. I'm like, B2B sales are easier because you don't have to do any of those fancy, like you don't have to do Facebook marketing. You don't have to have a really fancy website or any back end. You're just like, hey, my product costs $10,000 and it saves you $50,000 a year. And they're like, I don't believe you. And you're like, here's how it works. And they're like, I believe you now. Can we try it? And I'm like, yes, you can try it. And then that's it. It's over. It's like absolutely we want it. You know.
Right. And guess what? If they don't want it, they don't buy it. And that's
Yeah.
okay. Your product or service in any industry is not for everybody. And that's another thing I think a lot of people get hung up on is in coaches in general. Let's just take coaches, for example.
Yeah.
You see a coach that says they coach on 13 different things. The reality is it's probably true, but it's overwhelming for our brains to think that Callie can coach me on 13 different things. Where do we start? It's too many
Yeah.
choices,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Yeah. I want somebody who's just who's like, hey, this person used to be me, or they have a track record of helping people just like me, right? And they're lasered in. I know exactly. Yeah. Exactly. It's like. Um, but yeah, there's such a fear at looking at the world and saying, hey, I could help everybody lose weight, right? Or I could help everybody increase their sales. So I'm going to go after everybody. And I'm like, man, that's so hard. But why don't you just go after like this? The world's also so big, right? You can just pick any little group and there's thousands or tens of thousands of those people. Um, I don't know.
Yeah,
So like I'm rolling out my coaching program, like the next cohort in January, and I'll be honest with you. Like I know who my past successes were. I know who I work with every single day, and I'm like, I want to work with this kind of group of people. But I'm like, how do I message? Like, you know, so I'm using the term. I'm saying brilliant misfits now, right? Brilliant misfits that know that entrepreneurship is the best, if not only path to achieving the life that they want, right? To financial freedom and their personal goals. And I'm like, that's a little bit of a mouthful, but I know that those people are ready to kick ass and they're like filled with passion and like the idea that they have right that minute, they're going to run with it anyways, but it almost doesn't matter, right? Because they're going to be successful at some point, and I really want to just help them get successful. But it's like, could I go to small businesses and say like a lot of people will like, hey, I have a 5-figure side hustle, can we make it a 6-figure? Or I have a 6-figure business, can we how do we increase it to 7? Like those are common questions, and I'm like, I guess that's kind of cool, but is that what I want to do? Do I want to do I want to is that who I want to pick? There's a lot of those people too, right? It's really hard.
it that's a great point. But so here would be my question. If you said that to me, I would say, well, does it matter to you if you're serving the customer, right? And they're enjoyable to work with. If
Yeah,
they're
yeah,
whoever it is, right? If you're providing them with a solution which enhances their life and makes their life better, helps their family, helps their family's kid, whatever,
yeah,
does it really matter what you want? And the reason I bring that up is
yeah,
because the reality is I know more about health and wellness than
Yeah.
I know about any other specific niche. Well, sales is a given, right? I've been doing
Sure.
that for 25 years, but I did sales inside the health and fitness space.
Yeah.
I didn't really want to be in the health and fitness space anymore. I didn't want to be in it.
Yeah.
Here's the problem, or not the problem, but here's what I discovered. That's where I'm most effective or where I've found that I'm going to be the most effective is in that space. And how did I figure that out? Well, I can't, my computer's hooked to a million different things, but I can show you my whiteboard I'm looking at over here that's
Yeah.
filled up with, my story, the why, the what, the capture, the target, all the shit you got to figure out
Yeah.
to get to that end result. And was it the end result that I wanted? Not necessarily, but it's what fits me. It's
Yep.
where I can be the most effective. And you
Yep.
got to think about that when you're doing a business. You got to think about how you can make the most impact.
Interesting. Yeah. So this has been kind of an interesting little journey for me because um, last year, who I was predominantly speaking to and coaching was engineers, technical people, right? And it's who I have a lot of experience working with. But what I found is that they don't self-identify as entrepreneurs, and they don't have a burning problem, right? So this is an interesting thing. I guess I've lucked into this in the past in sales, um, is that when I reached out to engineers, and I do customer interviews, so I just was like, every engineer that I know that's thinking about making a product, I'm going to call them one right after the other, do Zooms, just like what we're doing right now, and ask them about problems, and they're kind of wishy-washy. They're like, because they know at any time they could just go back and get a six-figure job, right? And they're like, I want to change my life, but my life's pretty good. It's pretty good, and their sense of urgency didn't wasn't bigger than their sense of comfort, right? So the discomfort of changing their life was much, much bigger than the comfort of all the stuff they already had. They're like, I already make $145,000, and like, I want to be able to pay my bills, and I want to do this. And I'm like, well, how about you do this in your spare time? They're like, I don't know, like I have a lot going on, and I'm like, damn, I definitely don't want to, hitch my star, or hitch my wagon to this thing. And then I started talking to other people, and maybe they're engineers, but I'll tell you, this is what really happened is, like, I got married in the summer, right? And I started thinking about, like, who I used to be and who my circle are. And I realized, like, everybody that I invited to the wedding, they're kind of like, they don't they're now, bear in mind that a lot of these people are very successful. So like my friend, he ran a $55 million startup, right? Like, my other friend that I invited, he's a mid-level manager at Amazon Web Services. Like, these people they're successful, right? So I don't want to downplay that, but they also, like, don't really fit in society, right? They've always been like the person that was riskier, or the person that, you did the the crazy thing, or like they failed 7 times and then succeeded 20 times, or just started winning over and over again. And I was like, how come, uh, like, that would be me in my 20s, that's all of my friends, and that, why am I trying to work with specifically engineers, when even though some of these people are engineers, these are the people that I know, right? And so it kind of, like, it flips for me. And there's a there's definitely a component to that, certainly with coaching, but with sales, it's like, you can. I know that if you were an engineer and you had the product that was going to, like, rock the world, I can help you get to market. I can build your product, do all that stuff, get you funding, all that. But, like, there's something on the person side. Does that make sense? It's not even
Yes.
like a problem. It's like they're like, their sense of urgency, their problem is the same, right? The things
Right.
that they need are the same, but it's like the personality or the sense of urgency or something like that. And I'm still trying to put my finger on, like, how can I qualify and quantify that? But
Here's what I would say to that is that, you know, when you have, let's just take your example, $145,000. I've got a wife, got a kid. We've got
Yeah.
a house. $350,000 house. We both drive nice cars. We're
Yeah.
comfortable. Lots of people won't be willing to trade or to roll the dice on that $145,000 a year job because it provides them with the comfort around them, right? And
Yeah.
and people like you and I, we're wired differently because I will take risk, right? I
Yeah.
will I will if I feel like something's going to work, I will roll the dice on it because I know it, and it may not be the one, right? It may not be the
Sure.
right role, but it might be. And I'm okay with either or, right? I want it to be the role, but it doesn't have to be. And guess what, dude? I can promise you, I've had more stops and starts than I can count. I've had more disappointments than I can count. And but what I've learned from those disappointments and what I've learned from those situations are what not to do next time. Go into a partnership with somebody if you don't have the terms and conditions outlined. If you don't go into a contract with somebody if you don't know the terms of it, right? And you should dictate those terms.
Yes.
And because if you don't dictate your terms, they're going to dictate their terms, and you're going to have to deal with it.
Oh,
So who
100%.
wins? Not you.
Yeah.
Or if you are the person, or if you're like me now, it's called. Here's a massive tip: upfront contracts, right? And
Mhm.
here's how that goes. Callie, listen, today contacted me about doing sales coaching, and at the end of this call, I'm going to ask you if everything, if I can show you how to move your business forward with my services at the end of this call, we should be able to make a decision, right?
Yep.
Right. So now the pressure's off because you've already said if I can show you the value, you're going to sign up.
Yep.
So at
Yep.
the end of the call, if you say, "Well, Corey, I just don't know." Well, hang on, Callie. At the beginning of the conversation, I said if I can show you the value, you would be willing to go ahead and move forward. And you got value today, right? You saw how I can help move your business forward, right? Yes. Okay. Well, then great. Let's move forward. Like
Yeah.
you can't really backtrack unless you lied when I
Yeah.
ask you the question. But at least we have it all on the table,
Yeah.
right? I have
That
a point
plays
of
on
reference.
our requirement for public congruency, right? Is that like we've already made a verbal agreement that if I can meet the requirements and say like, hey, if I can show you a plan to double your sales, so to make you $300,000 in the next 12 months, will you hire me for 6 months on this retainer? And
Right.
then yeah, so we have like a deep neurological requirement for congruency in action, especially like inside of that conversation. So, but uh, I don't know. A lot of times people still say no, but then you get to ask them why, like why, and then they're like, well, I'm not actually the boss. Like you need to talk to this person. Like, let's get him. Let's go. Let's
Right.
do
But see,
it.
here's the thing. Here and this is where the sales process comes into play. If you do enough good if you ask enough good questions in the
Yeah.
initial discovery,
Yeah.
you should be able to help the person you're working with if they fit your demographic, so to speak.
What
Um,
what what are some great what are some great discovery questions? Because I love the idea of having to discovery like you're like, hey, I'm not gonna talk about the what we're doing really. This is just like, hey, let me see if I can add some value and ask you some questions, see if it's a good fit, or like let let me yeah, like tell me more about that because you've mentioned that a couple times, discovery call. I think that's super important.
yeah. So in what way?
Like how can we learn how to ask better questions, I guess?
Tell me
What
more
are
about that.
okay, so I feel like people get on the phone and they don't understand who they're talking to or what that sales process might look like. Like, am I talking to the right person? How do I find out if I'm talking to the right person? How do I know what the size of their problem is? How do I know if they're going to buy in the next 6 months or 60 years?
Well, why do you ask that? So do
Uh,
you see what I've
yeah,
done?
I know.
You caught it
Mhm.
now, right?
Yeah, no, no,
So
I caught it. That's
yes,
fantastic. Yeah, yeah,
but that's how you do it. You just say you ask better quick. Well, that's interesting. Why do you feel that way? Or
yeah,
tell me more. And most of the time, when you say tell me more, the other person's going to tell you more,
yeah.
and eventually they're going to tell you exactly why you need to be their coach in this scenario.
It's so you're giving people talk therapy for sales.
Yeah.
You know?
And it's all in wording is so super important. I got this from I love this, and you'll if you watch my stories, you'll see that I use this a lot. And I got this from Cole Hatter, so I give him props. I love him;
Yeah.
he's great. But you, Callie, you're going to enjoy. You want. Let's see, how does it go? Gosh, now I messed it up. You're going to want to have a conversation with me because you're going to enjoy the results that you're going to get.
Okay.
You're going to want to have a conversation with me because you're going to enjoy the results. That want in there, you're going to want. It sounds weird, right? It maybe doesn't sound weird to you, but when you say it, it feels very weird because it's just not the way normal. It's not the way you would normally say something. Normally, people say you have to. Well, if I tell you you have to do something,
Yeah.
well, how does that make you feel?
Yeah. Exactly. I mean, that's that you're also like you're pre-framing, right? So you're constructing you're it's like an early NLP technique, right? So you're creating a pre-frame where the person's like, oh, I'm going to want this thing, and then they're going to fill that bucket with what their wants or their positive or their negative. So yeah,
That's exactly right.
I like that.
Yeah, and you just have to guide people along the journey, right? You have to guide them through the conversation. And I don't mean like in a manipulative, mischievous way. I mean, you have to. It would be no different than if you were 5 years old going. And I don't even know why this popped in my head. I'm not even a bowl. I don't even bowl, but you know the rails on a bowling alley, right?
Yeah,
When you're a small kid, they put up the rails so it guides you to the pins. And that's all I'm doing is guiding the conversation to where I want it to go.
yeah, that makes sense. Like so, I'm really big into the why question because I come from the manufacturing world, and five whys is a lean manufacturing concept, and it's been kind of stolen by the coaching industry. But so check this out. This is something that's in my new program. I haven't dropped this on any of the podcasts yet, but like in manufacturing, there's a thing called a 3x5 why, and it's like is it the person? Is it the process? Is it the design? Like they'll break it up into three different causes, and then they ask why five times until you can't ask why anymore, and you get to a root cause, right? So we get the five whys thing, but for us, like when people jump in to our coaching, right, we get to ask why five times to get to the root cause. But check this out: 3x5 whys, we can go health, wealth, and relationships, right? We can say why, like, why do you want to do this thing? And they're like, because I want to achieve a financial result. Well, what's that financial result going to get you? And then what they really want is they want more time with their family, or they want to retire to an island and hang out with their wife, or they want to do a triathlon, or they want all those things. But if we don't have all three of those things and we can't ask why, we end up like over optimizing in one piece, right? So you like over optimize in wealth, but then you're like 400 pounds and you feel like garbage, and you give up all your money to just feel a little bit better, right? Or you feel amazing, but you're stressed out all the time because you can't pay your bills, or like you've estranged your wife. So it's like we have these different elements, but I love the questioning to like bring things out. I think somebody was saying like, for what purpose? For what purpose? And I heard them say this, and I was like, man, this is exactly what we do in manufacturing and quality assurance, right? To make sure that we're going to achieve the outcome that we say that we will. We don't want to check to make sure that something's right. We want to assure, not ensure, right? We want to
Right.
assure somebody, hey, we can achieve this result. So we do that by asking why a lot of times until it's annoying, right? And and it's like clicked for me the other day because I was like, it's actually part of my job at work is doing quality assurance, and it's like the most boring paperworky thing in the world. But I was doing it and I thought like, oh, this is perfect. This is exactly like asking somebody um, like why the hell they're trying to do something. And it made me think of our previous conversation because it's like I always ask people what they're trying to achieve or what their ideal life would look like. And we were talking about, I think the way that our society is set up right now, we're conditioned to not think about those things, or to think about that those are selfish and bad. And I'm like, you're people can never answer the question right away. They're like, why does this have anything to do with my business? I'm like, well, you're just starting. You are your business. So why are you're going to spend all your effort, energy, emotion, intelligence, your life, your time, your money into something that's not going to get you where you want? So like you're going to put all this into this bucket, and then you're going to look at it and be like, oh, I just hate sales, so I'm not going to call that
Right.
customer. I'm like,
Well, it's just
damn,
like,
dude.
yeah. Well, think about it. It's like the doctor that goes to 8 years worth of medical school and then decides, I fucking hate cutting people.
Yeah, and you're like, oh man, I
Wow. That's a real
yeah,
bummer, dude. Like, you should have
yeah.
asked better questions. You should
You
have
should
thought,
ask better questions.
wow, am I going to enjoy standing cutting people open all day dealing with organs? Probably not. Well,
Yeah.
then maybe you should, go a different direction.
Yeah, do something else. Do something else in the same industry, right? And like
Absolutely.
find fulfillment someplace else. Yeah, I think we're taught to put an idealized like blueprint of a life onto what our choices are. And it's almost like a mockery right now. It's like, go to high school, go to college, buy a house, like get into debt, do these things. And, you know, if we really were in the habit of asking why, or thinking even like more stoically, you could go ask people and they're like deeply unhappy, or they're deeply unfulfilled. And and it's like that they bring that structure, and you can call it employee mindset or the power of average or whatever you want to call it, and they bring that over into business. And so when it gets hard or you have to do something uncomfortable, like sales, and like I'm coming to you in that discovery call and you're like, why, and they're like, this is getting hard, I don't like it. And I guess that kind of circles back to me. I'm like, I'm digging deep for a group of people where, again, this is kind of like me being lazy. I'm trying to find a group of people where as soon as I tell them what I'm doing, they're like, yes, absolutely, that's exactly what I want, and they're ready to go. So I can be more effective, and I don't know, but I like I like the questions. I like the
Yeah.
questions.
And here's another thing that I think, I think you had asked me something earlier about, well, maybe why is it that I think salespeople have fears, and you hit on something a second ago that jogged my memory, and I thought, well, here's the thing. We see everywhere click funnels, right? You just go to click funnels, fill out a fucking click funnel, and you're gonna be rich. Like, that's the way they
Oh,
frame, or
yeah.
maybe not Russell Brunson himself, or maybe he does. I don't really pay attention to Russell Brunson, but
His podcast is filled with great information. His books are, but like I know exactly what you're talking about. This is like I'm going to pass the buck and I'm going to have this magic trick and I'm never going to have an uncomfortable conversation with people. Money's going to shoot in my pockets. And I'm like, hell no, hell no.
It just doesn't
Like,
work that way. But if you
no.
have that mindset, sales is going to be hard.
Yeah, agreed. Agreed. And you're going to probably spend a ton of money on Facebook ads and wonder why they don't work. You're going to spend a ton of money on content and wonder why it doesn't work. And yeah, you're going to say, man, this is really, really hard. And it's like, so I use this like, it's the only thing I like a magic quadrant for is where you divide things into four and you have simple, complex, right? You have easy, and difficult, right? So people they always want to make things complex and difficult because then it holds our like fragile ego at bay. We can say I can't do that because it's so difficult or so complex. And I've found that beyond like the deep engineering, actual technical things of like we're inventing something scientific, and that's usually not business. That's usually over on the intellectual property side, or that's in the academic realm, right? Um, and that's cool. But like 99 point forever nines percentage of the time, everything is simple and difficult. Everything that's worth doing, right? And and I think that's where people are getting this conflated is that they want click funnels or they want like a 96 email nurture sequence with NLP and they want like to know, hey, we're on live stream. Live streams are the ticket, right? If I do live streams, everything's going to click for me. They want there to be a trick because it has to be complex. It has to be more complex. And it's like, I guess like those things can like be accelerants, but like you got to have the core, right? Like, and everything we're talking about, it sounds suspiciously like work, but it also sounds really simple.
Yeah, and I think that, like, just take digital marketing as a whole, right? I don't believe that you can just market to people via funnels or Facebook ads and be super successful. Now, have some people been super successful that way? Maybe, probably.
Yeah.
But the vast majority, not so much. And so I think those things are super important. I
Hmm.
just don't think they're not the end all be all. They're just not. There isn't a end all be all. There's not a
Yeah.
one stop shop. There's just not.
Yeah. Yeah. Like we know some great digital marketers, and I think I think Alex would agree with this. Is like if you run a killer Facebook ad, right? You run a killer LinkedIn campaign and your offer sucks, all you're doing is scaling up bad sales, right?
That's
And
exactly right.
you're just and like for me on the product side, I tell people make a product that's worth sharing. It's because it's like I'm lazy and I'm cheap, right? I want when somebody opens up a product that we help design for them to post it on Instagram and tell their friends because that's like 5 more clicks that you don't have to pay. That's like $50 a head that you don't have to pay to get them to go through your landing page, your funnel, or whatever silly thing you're doing. But like, how do you figure that out? You go door to door. You cold call, or you ask for referrals, or you do the groundwork, the regular stuff. And I don't know. I like digital marketing because I think it's cool, but it's also zero barrier to entry for people to say that they're digital marketers. And like, so there's just so much scam stuff. And I'm like, I know people that do like, you know, uh, they do 6 figures a month, they do 6 figures a day or 6 figures an hour, like with digital marketing. And like those people are legit. Like they know all those little pieces, but all the, in the like ClickFunnels Facebook group or whatever, people are I think they're just scaling up failure.
I think you're probably right. And let me ask you a question. So when
Yeah,
you do send your product out and you
yeah,
want people to share it on Instagram,
yeah.
do they always do what you want them to do? Just answer that, and then I'll go to the second part.
Not really. I
All right.
mean,
So here's my question: uh, Why would you not send a note along with it saying, "Hey, do me a favor. It
Yep.
really helps my brand if you shoot a picture of your product and share it on Instagram and tag me.
Yep.
Literally, people just want to be told how to do whatever it is you want them to do. And if
Yeah.
you don't tell them, how are they ever going to know?
Russell Brunson did that for his last book launch. So if you got his book case, like he said, "Hey," and it had a little card with the CTA in it, and you take a picture of it and post it, and he incentivizes it. And you look at that structure, and you say, people at that level know that. And like I did some e-commerce of like really expensive small goods, right? The little sculptural vessels and products. And this is really where I formulated this, because I'm used to selling like technical products or like mass consumer goods, things like that. It's like when you are selling this bespoke thing, we put the note in there, and we had some extra cool packaging, and we did some like I put it in a leather case that we collaborated with somebody else. But it it helped with that, like spending that extra $10 or $20 on that $1,000 item, right? Made it so people weren't expecting it, right? They weren't expecting the note, they weren't expecting the case, they weren't expecting this little extra piece. So like, just and that this was like 3 years ago we did this project now, and like just 2 or 3 days ago, I think I posted in my stories on Instagram one of those projects. It like the video for it keeps going viral over and over and over again. It has millions and millions of views on this one stupid video, and they tag me in it over and over again. But it's like, it's because the thing's kind of cool, but also the people that like it, every time somebody posts, they all comment on it, and then it's stupid to share it out again. And it's like, on people have to realize that like sales is embedded in the product too, right? It's not just it's yeah, yeah. I mean, sales is everything. You said it. So
It's literally everything. I
yeah,
mean, if you think about it, any conversation that you have to persuade somebody to do what it is you're wanting them to do, whether that be, let's just take the current climate. When I have to walk into Target and I don't have a mask on, and I know the little shit bag at the front desk is gonna, or the front little thing is gonna say, "Hey, put your mask on." I have to convince him in some shape, form, or fashion. And this is such a great example because, uh, I've had to change my approach, because initially I was like, I'm not, I want to fight about it. I want to argue about it. And then I was like, all right, that's literally getting me nowhere. And it's actually doing me a disservice, because I'm pissing off my wife because she's in the store with a mask on and she hates it. And so I changed my approach, and I just figured out what works, how quickly can I get you to shut up talking to me about a mask? What do I need to say? And now I figured that out, and it's medical. That's all I say. I walk off, and that does it. I don't have another question after that, unless I'm dealing with a complete idiot that does not know the Constitution or the laws.
yeah. So I mean, when you look at sales and you are able to expand it beyond just like, I don't know. I don't know what people think, but I do know that there is a perception that it's like the car salesman, or it's like making cold calls on the phone, like, or something like that. But when you look at it as, hey, I am going to interact for a purpose, I guess. I don't know, but
You're a problem solver,
yeah,
right?
problem
I
solver.
solve problems. Whatever, if whoever it is that I'm working with, if they're my client or a customer, I'm just solving problems for them. And maybe they know the answers to the problems, but for whatever reason, my insight or my 30,000-foot view gives them a different perspective. Because lots of times, and I'm sure you can identify with this, when you're in your business, there's lots of times where you're in it so closely that you can't see the holes in the boat. And so
Sure.
if you're that close to it, then you really need to hire somebody with an unbiased opinion to give you a different perspective, because it could literally be what changes the zero at the end of your business, or maybe the two zeros. It could be one simple thing that maybe you've been taught since you were 5 years old and you just forgot, right? Let me give you
Yeah.
one more quick nugget. So here's the other thing. All right, think about this. Here's my other theory about salespeople. As a child, we were taught, or at least I was taught, I assume you were taught, you can agree or disagree, that you were not supposed to speak to strangers, right? Your
Yeah.
parents probably told you, don't talk to strangers. All right, so think about this. The subconsciously, that's still playing. And so consciously, or better yet, subconsciously, you're thinking, I can't talk. Your parents never gave you permission. They never said, hey, today you can talk to strangers. You are still stuck in that 5-year-old self that believes you're not supposed to talk to strangers. So that's why when you pick up the phone and call a stranger in for business, you feel uncomfortable. And
Yeah,
that is,
that
I really
embedded
believe.
that embedded fear, right? That little
Absolutely.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, so that's like a it's a structural belief that you wouldn't be able to consciously say, well, I'm not like afraid of strangers. Like I'm a big boy, but but somewhere in there there's a story, don't talk to strangers. And it's not a cool Dio song, right? It's it's
Right.
actually like you think I'm going to get in trouble or this is awkward or this is the wrong thing to do. Yeah, yeah, I definitely I could see that. I could definitely see that kind of behavior because that's like getting into those thoughts and beliefs piece in there as well. Yeah, I think yeah, there's definitely some fear of rejection thing I'm kind of recapping these things in my
Sure.
mind. So there's definitely like a fear of rejection piece or a fear of the unknown piece, right? So like there's a danger of uncertainty, right? So I think that's one piece, and it just has some different manifestations. There's um, we're taught we're taught the wrong lessons about money, and without
Yes.
going down the like money is a neutral power, neutral energy, right? It's about the lust of it or the application of it or the service of it is like where we get into the negative and positive behaviors of money. So I think that's a second component is that people, whether they would acknowledge it or not, they're running businesses and they think that money is bad or they have success guilt. So I think that's a second piece of it. And then yeah, I think that's cool. It's like we're taught to stick to like our little tribe of people and to like don't talk to strangers. Right?
Don't talk to strangers. That's it. I mean, yeah, it's so bizarre if you look at such a simple thing, right? And maybe let's just say that let's say you hire me for $20,000 and I give you that one thing, right? It's not even that big a deal, but it changed your whole trajectory for the rest of your life because I held space for you to be able to say, you don't have to be scared to talk to strangers. You have permission, right? It
Yeah.
sounds so stupid. And that's certainly not all you could get out of a call. But if it were, it doesn't matter. If whatever it is we talk about, if you pull one thing that's going to move your business in the right direction or move it positively, well, then I would say you won.
Yeah. 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 And then that's like a pure money conversation is people like even if I transformed your business in one conversation, somebody would be like, well, it's only like an hour of his time. And so there's a whole other interesting conversation about counting other people's money and like the value of time versus effectiveness and all that stuff. But that's getting that's getting deep in the weeds. Corey,
But that's true. Go ahead.
where is the best place for people to follow you?
So I would say at CoreyBerrier on all the social channels. That's my personal, and then at salesceo.co is my other Instagram handle. And course, Successful Life Podcast is the podcast that I host that you will be on so very shortly.
Yeah, I got to plug the
Um,
podcast because it is really great, and you get into some conversations with really other amazing entrepreneurs. So like there's a million podcasts out there, but I like listening to my friends' podcasts. One, because it's interesting, but yeah, you have great guests and you get into crazy conversations that even if I wasn't like a business nerd or just trying to get that nugget out of the conversation, I'd be like, man, Corey's chopping it up. He's having a good time. So like, um, yeah, everybody definitely check out Successful Life Podcasts and go through and get some stuff. Sorry to interrupt you, Corey, but
no, you're good. That was it, man. I'd love to have anybody come on and listen. And hey, I started it to share other people's stories, and
yeah,
it I did it from a place of authenticity, and I don't say that lightly, but I really did do it for that very reason. I didn't do it for any other reason, so much so that I suck at marketing it, right? I suck at using content over and over. Like, I just am not really great at that because that wasn't the intention. I would not suggest anybody hearing this, don't do that. Don't do what I did. I mean, be authentic, but have a fucking plan, right? I mean, you want to make sure that you're going to be able to use the material and the time that you've invested. Because I look back and I'm like, Jesus, man, I've spent hundreds of hours having conversations with people, and they've been amazing. Podcasting has been one of the best things that's ever happened to me. I just
it,
enjoy just like having this conversation with you. It's it just it's just such a real. I think it's taken over radio. I really do, but I don't listen to the radio.
yeah.
Do you?
No, 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 no. I still enjoy some audiobooks,
Oh,
but I can't listen to audiobooks of business books at all because I just like I want to like pause it and think about it and like go implement it or write something down and I just ruin it for myself. But I really like podcasts um, because it just seems more like natural language than the structure and fluff of a business book. But it gives you a good excuse, like podcasts or being on podcasts or hosting a podcast gives you a great excuse to go talk to somebody and learn something and like yeah meet people. There's just you know
yeah,
it gets you in the same room. Like I said, I think about things like skill acquisition, and it's like start a podcast. Go talk to Corey. Get him on your
yeah,
podcast.
heck
you know,
yeah,
learn something.
yeah. It's so much fun too, man. It
Yeah,
really, really is so much fun if if you're just be real. I
yeah,
mean, and that's part of the reason you brought up Brad Lee. I'm such a fan of his because he, even in person, like, he's just that guy. He's just a normal. He's actually just a normal
he's cracking me up.
dude. I mean, he really is as uncomfortable. And if anybody listened to the first podcast, I was so nervous, dude. I was so freaking, which is bizarre because I think I interviewed him 6 or 7 months before I ever went out there. But
Mhm.
the mic was turned differently that time, right? I was the
Okay.
guest opposed to being the host, and the dynamic just changes a little bit.
Yeah, I don't know.
So
He cracks me up like that. He just it this goes to kind of our world thing, and I'll close this out. It's like I don't have to agree with everything that you believe in. I don't have to believe in everything that Brad or Andy says. I can just enjoy them. I can enjoy their perspective. I can listen to their perspective, and for Brad particularly, he just cracks me up because he had the founder of Reebok on, and he asked him about the U.S. presidential election. I'm like, come on, Brad, like that guy is retired in France. He's British. He doesn't give a shit about the US election, right? And the guy's like so nice about it. I'm like, come on, Brad, just because you care about it, like nobody cares. He doesn't care about that. That guy's like a billionaire. He's retired in France. And he's just like, well, it's a pretty big deal over here. And I was like, I was on my walk and I just cracked up. And like, yeah, I enjoy the podcast, listening to podcasts. I think it's the best compared. Yeah, I would never switch back to radio. It's just
no,
fun. It's fun to be
no
part of the
chance.
community too of
Absolutely.
but yeah, Corey, thank you so much for taking the time. I know you're super busy, um, but yeah, this was great, man. I
Thank
appreciate
you,
it, brother.
brother. Yeah, it was
Uh,
great, man. Thank you. Appreciate you having me on.
so same thing that you say and our friends say. Look, I don't charge anything to do the podcast. I'd say help me keep the lights on, but like they close the building, lights off, right? So like, uh, I I don't ask for money. I'm not putting out ads or anything, but we have a fee, right? And the fee is if you thought this was fun, if you thought this was entertaining, you thought it was educational, if you got something amazing to take away from the stuff that Corey and I talked about, share this with a friend. Post it on your Facebook, post it on your LinkedIn, because we're streaming on all these platforms. It's easy to share. But tell a friend about End Hype, right? And that's how we were growing the
Absolutely.
show. We're just growing by a couple of listeners every week, and that's good enough for me because if you listen to this and you have an obstacle or you have a question that if that was solved, it would take your business and your life to the next level, DM me, message me, and I'm going to bother you and suck you into this, Corey. If somebody has an obstacle with sales, hit up Corey, right? That's why we have people on here, is to answer your questions. But if if you message me, I'll turn that into an episode. I'll turn that episode of the show, or I'll bring on somebody to answer that question for you. So we have people coming on to talk about relationships. We've got people to come on talk about podcasts. We have more people to come on talk about LinkedIn because we had Nate on, and like that just opened up a can of worms. So, but yeah, message me. I appreciate your time. Go out there, do something, and most of all, end hype.